Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wired Dirty Podcast. This is season 1, episode number 15. My name is Keith. I'm here with Doug. Doug, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. 15 episodes. We are just trucking along. We're talking about all kinds of good things, and we have a really good topic today. I'll let you tell everybody what we're going to talk about.
We do. And so we're actually going to sidestep the nerd news for this week because we have a really cool interview with someone who works at Disney. And we will introduce her here in a moment, but she's going to expand upon all the cool stuff behind the scenes, all the amenity stuff that they get to take part in at Disney, and just kind of give us a peek behind that Magic Kingdom curtain. So we're really excited about this interview. But what we will do is there's been some pretty good news this week, especially with Google announcement, which I know you're itching to talk about your Google Fold. I can see it.
Yeah.
I know you really want to, but they had some other cool stuff. We will double up on our nerd news for the next episode is what we will do, just to make sure we get everything covered between this week and next week as well. So, Doug, anything else I'm missing before we bring in our guest?
No, I'll just kind of play up our guest. Really excited to learn kind of the ins and outs of Disney World and behind the scenes facts and cool stuff to see and do and all that. So it's
Yep,
going to be a good show
it's going
today.
to be fun. So let's get on into it. Well, everyone, we have a treat for you for the 15th episode. Today, we're going to talk to Leah. Now, full disclosure, Leah is my daughter, one of the coolest people I know. Obviously, she's my kid, so I'm going to think that. But Leah is doing something that's really special that we wanted to showcase that fits right in line with our Wired Nerdy topics, and that Leah is currently a cast member at Disney World in Orlando, Florida, as a part of their postgraduate internship program that they have. It's very tough to get into. We'll talk about that. Now, right out the gate, I want to be very, very clear. Leah is going to talk about some topics that oftentimes may not be talked about. I'm sure you can find it on the internet. She does not speak for corporate Disney. We do not want the House of Mouse coming after Leah by
Yeah.
any means at all. And so she does not speak for the Disney Corporation. This is her views. And her perspective, her opinions only. And it's awesome that she's going to be able to share some of her insights of what she does there at Disney. And we thought it would just be kind of a nice peek behind the curtain, so to speak. Now, if you have kids listening, earshot, that sort of thing, we're going to talk about some things that may take away the magic of the Magic Kingdom and the happiest place on earth, because we're going to be talking about cast members and the work that they do and characters and all that kind of stuff. So, just a warning about that. So, let's get underway. Leah, it's good to see you. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing good. How about
It's
you
weird to
guys?
talk to you like this.
I know
So.
it's kinda odd.
Well, thank you for being on the show, though, because we're excited. I know Doug and I were talking about it, and it's really cool. We're twinsing. See, we all three have
Yeah.
our merch on. So go to our store,
Yeah.
check it out. Leah's the first one to actually buy the hoodie, and it looks like it's like pretty good quality there.
I
So
love
Very
it.
nice.
I've
I
been
yeah,
living in it.
I when they had the colors, I told Doug, I was like, I got to make sure I have pink in there because I know Leah's gonna want a
I
pink
saw the
option.
Oh,
pink and I was like, "Well,
definitely.
guess I'm gotta buy it."
I knew right away that was going to be your jam. So let's go ahead and get into it. So Leah, let's just kind of set the stage. First of all, tell us about the Disney program and how did you get into it? I know it's kind of tough to get into. What is it? What's the purpose of it? And how did you come to be in this program?
Yeah, so it's called the Disney College Program. It is like you said, sort of an internship program that you can do. You have to have been enrolled in a university for at least one semester, and then you can do it from any time from then until up to 24 months after you graduate college. Um, and The application process was a little different for me than it was for other people because at the time I applied, they were still in their coming back from COVID
COVID,
like
yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
application style. So for me, I did not have like typically you submit an application, you do sort of like an online quiz type
Mhm.
thing almost or interview almost and it's just you're answering a bunch of personality questions sort of and then from there they say if you're continuing to be reviewed or not, or if you're immediately like, nope, sorry. And then other people typically after that point have a phone interview. I was still at the point where they were not doing phone interviews, but not having a phone interview meant that I also did not get um, to like state a preference for where I wanted to work within Disney World. They have recently reinstated the phone interview, and then you can, rank certain positions that you may like over others. It's not guaranteed you'll get it.
Sure.
Um, but then after that, they sort of you can submit a resume, you don't have to, and then they just sort of review all of the that information and decide if you get in or not. And once you're accepted, you're eventually assigned a role. You don't find out right away. I think I found out like 2 weeks before I left for the program, so it was pretty short notice.
Yeah.
Um, and mine was also a random assignment because I didn't get to
And it could be
state a
anything.
preference. It
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 could
could
be
be
anything
anything
in the
within the parks.
parks. Yeah.
So, the only thing that, like, I specifically was not eligible to work in the park is, um, at Epcot within the countries, we have, cultural representatives from those
Oh,
countries
yeah.
working there.
To keep it authentic, I assume. Yeah.
Yes, so I obviously am not working at any of those stores that, like, have a cultural
Sure.
representative, which we are actually just recently fully back with all of our cultural representatives after COVID, which is a really
That's cool.
fun thing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that was the only thing coming in I couldn't do. I mean, there's a couple other things obviously coming, like, I'm not, like, a technician or anything for,
Sure.
like, the fire like, a pyrotechnician for the fireworks. I couldn't come in just randomly. They're not just putting college
You're
students on
you're
that.
not setting Maleficent Dragon on fire for Mickey, are
I
you?
am not. No, no. There's trained professionals actually doing those
Yeah.
types of things, but anything from quick service, character attendants, um, attractions like running the rides,
Rides. Okay.
yeah, you name it, things like that is you're eligible to do.
Any of those
Um,
things you could be. And you're living there.
mhm.
How long's the program? Is it how
it,
long
it
are the
depends.
stints for?
Yeah, it depends on when you arrive, and then like how long essentially you want to do it. My program specifically is 6 months. That's typically the average. Some people only do 4 months, but it can range anywhere from 4 to 6 to start, and then you can extend, which essentially means you do a second program back to back. So I know people that have been here for almost a year
Oh
because they
wow.
extended their program, and like one of my roommates has been here since last August
Oh
and
wow.
will be here till this August.
Okay. Gotcha. And so you're postgraduate, you've graduated.
Mhm.
Do you find the ratio of are people mainly still in school, or are they, or is it a good mixed bag of some that are done with school, some are in? What's the
I
ratio
would
that you've
say,
seen?
for the most part, I would say it's a great mixed bag. However, a lot of people I've met, they're either freshly in college. I have met a lot of they've only had one semester of college, like a lot of freshmen. And then in their second semester, they said, "Yep, I'm going to go do this," because they didn't really know like what they want to do, like major wise. And then eventually they'll go home and
Yeah.
finish their degree and decide.
Okay.
But then I've also met quite a few post grads as well, so those are probably the two biggest areas I've
Hmm.
seen, because it's probably whenever it's easiest for a lot of people
Gotcha.
to
Okay.
participate and take the time to participate.
Very cool. Very cool. Doug, I'm been hogging her. Your turn, buddy. You take it away,
Yeah,
man.
you're asking all the questions I want to ask. You get college credit. This is something building towards your degree that you want to end up with.
It can. It depends on your university. So, if I was still enrolled in my university, I could have utilized this as being my internship for my major, and I would have gotten college credit that way.
Oh, cool.
Um, but some universities may not accept it as an
Sure.
internship. It just really depends. You have to
Since you're
get
done with
interviews
school,
and things
though,
like that.
for you
Yeah, for me, I'm not
specifically,
currently getting any
yeah.
Oh,
college credit.
yeah. So with every job, you have good days, bad days, some challenging or not. What do you think's the most challenging aspect of your job, and what do you do to kind of overcome that?
Yeah, I would say that probably, I mean, no matter who you ask, like at Disney, like every job is very different in certain ways. Like whether so mine to specify, I am in quick service for festivals at Epcot. So quick service is going to be very different than like attractions. I'm dealing with lots of food and drinks and things like that each day rather than like operating a ride. So it's going to be very different for everyone you ask. For me personally and for my job, I would say that just the aspect of obviously Disney has a level of expectancy that a lot of guests, want met whenever they're attending the parks or anything like that. And as a cast member, there's very high expectations, not only from guests, but also our superiors and bosses and things like that. Rightfully so, because Disney is known for its high level of hospitality
The
it provides.
experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
definitely. Yeah.
For me, I feel like any time that in guest areas, we call them on stage. Anytime I'm on stage, I feel like I have to be on. I have to, be happy. I have to be in a good
Yeah.
mood. And
You
some
can't be
days
like he can't be a crabby Six Flags worker.
Uh-oh.
no,
Yeah, can't do
I
that.
and even, another saying we have is our guests aren't difficult, they're unhappy. And so even guests that are unhappy and, you know, m maybe a little bit more demanding than others, like, you
Sure.
still have to be pleasant to deal with yourself. And obviously, we're human too, and, like, our higher ups know that and everything, and so we're allowed to take breaks and things like that if we need them, but I just think the biggest part for me is I'm also more of an introvert, so that makes it a little harder to just always be
Yeah.
on and, like, ready to talk to people and socialize, um, but at the same time, it also can be really rewarding because some of the interactions you have are really, really cool with people.
Yeah, it definitely sounds very customer friendly oriented. To go back a little bit, now you said you're in quick service. Can you explain to us kind of what quick service is?
Yeah, so quick service is a little different depending on what park you're in and like what spot you work. My quick service is actually probably the easiest version of quick service to work because essentially people come up to the booth I'm working at, they order, we give them their receipt, we send them to the next person at our booth, they look at the receipt, and we hand them their food item and they go on their way. They're not
Oh,
sitting down at tables or anything like that with us. So I'm not bussing tables. I'm not like serving people or anything like that. It's just what the name says. It's like quick service. It's just like a lot nicer version of like fast food, essentially.
so that leads me into my next question. What are some of the best food options available at the park?
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a great one. I'm gonna
Might be a
say
really
it.
hard question. I don't
It,
know.
it is. It is. I'm gonna say obviously Epcot has the best food items, hand down, of the four parks.
Oh,
I'm gonna honestly, it's a hot take, but Magic Kingdom probably has the worst food options, and even though
uh-oh.
that's the most popular park, like, it's just they're not as good, but
Mhm.
Epcot's level of food is just I don't know, it's a lot higher than all of the
Yeah.
other parks, and I'm a little biased because I
But
work
you've
in
been to
Florida.
all the parks, so
I
you've
am.
sampled the food.
But
Yeah,
even
so
in Epcot, I
mhm.
personally think the festival's food now it does depend on what festival is
Sure.
currently happening. I think some of the festival food is some of the best food I have ever had in my life.
Oh,
Um, and so like I said, a little biased, but it's all very good. And I think, like I said, just Epcot in general has great. However, if you're looking for like good dining experiences, though, the Be Our Guest restaurant that is in I believe Magic Kingdom, it's amazing. It's kind of pricey, but it's worth it. Even if you just go for, like, dessert, it's really good. Oga's Cantina is also really good. It's in Galaxy's Edge at Hollywood Studios. That's a good dining experience, and then the last one is what is it called? I think it's called, Space, like, 220 is what I think it is,
Mhm.
and that's in Epcot, and essentially, they take you, it's kinda
I saw
underground. They
this.
take you up
I saw a
like,
video.
in an elevator type thing, and they act like you're going up into space and you dine in space, and so those are probably some of the cooler, like, sit down places, though, but if you just
Experiences. They're not just
yeah.
yeah.
food. It's
Yeah.
like
Yes. But, like,
almost like a
food
ride.
experiences, those are probably some of the ones I've heard the best things about.
Very cool. And so, I mean, whenever we talk about like, your role obviously is quick service. There's a lot of rules, and specifically I wanted to dig into and I know there's probably things you can and can't share, but When it comes to cast members, do you know any that dress up? What is it like for them? And then let that segue into what are the rules for cast members in general? Because you mentioned that they want to maintain this magical experience. What are some of the things that you have to be mindful of as a cast member? And then also, what is it like for those people dressing up? Is it terrible,
Yeah.
especially in the Florida heat? Like what's the background on that?
I
So
bet.
I will say I personally I don't know tons of people that play characters. Also, most of the time the language they're going to use, no one's going to say, "Oh, I play this
I am,
character at
yeah.
Disney World."
Oh,
The terminology is, "I am friends with this person." So I have met people that are friends with Kylo Ren in
Mhm.
Galaxy's Edge. Um, who else? Tigger is one that I met, and then another one is so I actually see Snow White backstage a lot at Epcot.
cool.
So
Is
like
that
so,
weird?
it's kind
It's like, oh, it's Cinderella. Yeah.
Hey, you're kinda late.
because, like, sometimes they'll be in, like, half their costume walking around or something, or you'll just see, like, Belle smoking a cigarette in the back, like, it's just it's
Uh-oh.
it's a little odd. Like I said, not to ruin any magic, but
Yeah.
the backstage area is a bit different,
Oh, wow.
but
That's
definitely for the people that are friends with characters that, like Tigger, that are in the big
yeah,
costumes, it gets really warm. Every
sure.
costume is also very different, and it kinda gets odd, but even those that are, like, princess, and
Yeah,
everything, they've got a lot of, pieces on and everything. It can get hot in the Florida,
yeah.
Yeah.
sun, especially because Florida in general is just super hot, but
And
that's why
they have strict rules, right? Like, they can't
we
you
have
Probably
yeah.
can't smoke out on the
yeah, they
lot.
couldn't be
Oh, no,
outside
no,
smoking,
no. Oh
obviously.
Yeah.
gosh. No,
Yeah.
no, no. And so but they also they have rules that are for our safety that,
Sure, sure.
those
Yeah.
characters aren't allowed to be if it's a certain degree level, they're not allowed to be out for a certain amount of time and or they
Okay.
come out, like, in
That's
certain
good.
increments, everything. And they have character attendants with them that are there to help
Guide, yeah.
regulate their safety and things like that.
That's good.
Um, and my roommate's actually a character attendant, so she has a lot of fun stories.
Oh, I
Yeah,
bet.
Um, but yeah, so there's and then rules wise, they frame it more as we have a lot of guidelines we follow. The
sure.
main things are we have Disney's 5 keys are what they're called. And it's safety, inclusion, courtesy, show, and efficiency. And those are what we base everything we do working wise around. So they have a saying that's safe D, as in the Disney D, begins with me. And so it's sort of the idea that
Mm,
everything you do leads with safety because we don't
yeah,
want anyone getting hurt and everyone we want our guests to be relaxed. They're on
sure.
vacation. They've spent a lot
Absolutely.
of money to be here. We want everyone to be safe.
Yeah,
And
that's
then,
awesome.
so those are all sort of the framework for everything we do. Now there are rules. I can't be on my phone anytime that I'm on stage, like in guest areas. So you go backstage and all you see is cast members on their phone because they can't be on them at any other time. Um, if I want to, go to the park as a guest myself, I can't enter through the cast area that way. Like, there's certain areas for
Sure.
smoking versus not. You have to make sure that you're in the Disney look for your costume
The
anytime you
costume.
go on
Mhm.
stage, which essentially means for me, I'm in quick service. I can't have anything on my wrists. I can't wear any rings.
Sure.
My hair has to be back like it is now. I got off work earlier, but and so there's little things like that that we have to make sure
To
we are
maintain the
staying in
magic.
line with. Yeah, and so, like, my water bottle, it has to be on my belt. I can't just be, like, carrying it around, like, flinging around everywhere.
Mhm.
Like, it's just little
Sure.
things like that. Anytime you're on stage, you have to have your name tag on, like, because you have to
Okay.
be ready at all times to help
Sure.
guests.
Always on,
Little things like
so
that. Yeah.
So it sounds like a lot of moving parts to get everything working for a normal day. Um, so saying that, is there like some tunnels or alleyways, or how do you get quickly from one area to another
because there's a lot of
if there's
people there.
special events going on? Yeah.
Yeah, how do you
Yes.
navigate quickly with all those people? Like, what's that like? That's a good
Yeah,
question.
so, um, there are tunnels in Magic Kingdom. So Magic Kingdom does have tunnels. I, however, have never been in them because I don't ever work in Magic Kingdom.
Sure.
That is the only park, though, that'll have tunnels.
Oh,
Every other park just has backstage areas. I know Epcot the best because that is where I work. I have also worked at the ESPN Worldwide Sports spot, and then I've worked at Typhoon Lagoon, the water park. So those are the areas that I know the backstage areas the best. Um, for the bigger ones like Epcot, essentially, we have just walking paths that are
not
on the
public.
outside of yeah, they're not public. It mainly goes around the World Showcase section, because that's where we have the most of our staff working. We do have areas to the other sections of the park, but we don't have nearly as many staff working there. We have buses that can bus us around that path. You can walk it. If you're going to a certain spot, we don't recommend walking it because it is a very long walk unless you just show up really early for your shift. Um,
Yeah.
but we have buses backstage that you can take to get to a spot. But I mean, the parks are so big themselves that if you think about it, essentially, if you look at the map of the park, just extend it, and that's all of the staff areas. It's just surrounding it, and it's you just can't see it.
Sure. So, what are some of the most outside of like obviously you have a purview of all of the background stuff, but you're always dealing with the public. But we see all the time like there are so many people that go to Disney World, including like famous people. Is there any so two-part question? Is there anyone famous that you can recall or heard of while you were there? And then two, what's the most memorable guest interactions that you've had that have stuck with you personally?
Yeah, so I personally there's only been like, famous people there's been a couple, like, TikTok famous people that I've
Sure.
served stuff to, and then I think there was one actor from Cobra Kai, the show on
Oh,
Netflix, that I
yeah.
served a beer to, which I did not know he was in the show whenever I gave him his beer, but then someone came up to me afterwards and told me about it. Um, but, other people to talk to, I know a few people that, like, work in attractions. They
Mhm.
see a lot of, VIPs a lot of the time
Gotcha.
because most of the time, the famous people, they go through the backstage areas themselves, and they have, a VIP
Makes
tour
sense.
guide
Oh,
that
it makes
is
total
guiding
sense.
them through the park and everything.
You don't want them
Um
getting mobbed.
No, not at
Exactly,
all.
and so I've heard, Jonas Brothers, I heard one time they were just walking around, which was odd. I hear Neil Patrick Harris apparently is here all the time and
Oh,
has a
man.
specific room he stays in at one of the
Oh, wow.
resorts, every single time. Um,
That's so
I
cool.
mean, James McAvoy was here recently.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like, it's there's pretty big names, and then, I mean, you've got the people that are in Disney-owned company, like
Sure.
Marvel, like,
Mm.
actors and things like that will
Yeah.
come, they'll come on vacation, you know, like,
Yeah.
I think, like, Chris Evans was here
Mm.
yeah, once, like, there's just things like
That's
that, so,
awesome.
sadly, I personally have not interacted with any of those people, but,
Yeah, you haven't given Chris Evans a beer.
oh
Dang.
gosh, no, but I wish.
Here you go,
I don't think
Cap.
I could. I don't think I could. I would
He's
just
shaking.
yeah, I would spill the beer everywhere, it wouldn't be good. Um,
It'd be memorable,
Yeah,
though.
it
that
would.
is true, that is true, but the interactions I remember the most are probably, um I don't know, I'm in Epcot, I do see a lot of kids
Sure.
because while people think Epcot, they don't think it's as kid-friendly as the other parks, depending on who you ask, it may not be. It does have a lot of fun things for kids, but I don't see nearly as many kids as, like, those working in Magic Kingdom do. So a lot of the time, the most fun interactions I have are with kids.
That's
Like the
cool.
other night, I had a little girl run up to me and hand me this card that said "You are beautiful" on it while I was
Mm.
doing register, and
Oh,
she just booked it. Like she ran away, like after, and it was just
That's
really
sweet.
sweet. And so, like kids trying to do sweet little things. There's a little
That's
boy
cool.
that was ranking his favorite parks for me in detail, explaining why each one like was good or something. So like those little actions are really fun. And then just whenever a guest like wants to talk and like which
Mhm.
granted I don't always want to make conversation. So I completely understand whenever guests don't want to. But I have guests that are like I'll pour a beer and they'll be like, "Oh, that's a good pour." And I'm like, "Thank you." So those are always really nice. I always really appreciate that.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Doug, you're up.
all right. Yeah. the best time to visit. Florida can be really, really hot. I've heard. I've only been on the beach, and it's supposed to be hot on the beach, but visiting a park, lots of concrete. So, kind of a multi-part question. What's the best time to visit, and do you have shade and places for people to go take a break? I guess.
Yeah. So Disney World in general is very aware that Florida is the way it is with its weather. I would definitely say it dep if you're looking for the best time to visit, it depends on what you define the best time to be. However, the I would say currently is one of the best times actually between spring break season and summer break season. It is whenever we typically have a lot lower attendance levels in the
Oh,
park, and so it's going to be a lot less busy. I've had days recently that have been really, really slow,
hmm.
guest
Those
wise.
are the days I need to go. No
Yeah,
lines, no
and so
waiting.
There you go.
exactly. And now I will say you're gonna wait for certain things because it's just that's part of it. But a lot of the wait times are a lot less. And then also we're not at, this season we're not quite into our rainy season yet to where it like downpours at 3 p.m. every day. So you're not like guaranteed rain. And then also it's not nearly as hot yet. It is fairly warm still.
Yeah.
But it's not as bad. However, I have heard that another wonderful time to come is during the holidays. A, because of the way Disney decorates is just absolutely gorgeous, and B, the weather is amazing. I've heard, especially people that come from areas that have like bad winters or something like that.
Hmm.
They say it's gorgeous here around the holidays time.
Oh, cool.
So one of those two.
Oh, well, very nice. So Florida's got that weather we know, but what about its wildlife? You always hear about alligators and the snakes and all the crazy things down there. Have you had any interactions with them or anything in the park?
Thankfully, no alligators. That was honestly one
Oh,
of my
that's
biggest
good.
fears, coming here. I was very worried that I was just immediately gonna see an alligator as soon as I crossed into the Florida state line, but I have
Yeah.
not, seen any alligators. The closest thing, like, wildlife-wise is that in Epcot specifically well, not in Epcot specifically, but Florida in general, there's lizards everywhere. So
Oh man.
I'm outside most days, so I just see lizards sort
All
of
over the
coming
place.
they're tiny little guys, like,
Yeah.
Oh, there you
they
go.
just scurry around. We also have a lot of birds at
Hmm.
Epcot, lots of ducks, a few cranes, um, so
It
those
just
are the
adds to
main
the
things that I see.
ambiance, right?
It
Yeah.
does, it really because we just let them do their thing, and we
Yeah.
ask the guests not to feed them or touch them. I did have a lady, try to pick up a duck the other day, and I was like,
Uh-oh.
Miss, please don't pick up the duck," but, um, and so, where you're gonna see the most wildlife, though, is Animal Kingdom because it is
Sure.
a theme
So,
park, but it
yeah.
essentially has a zoo within it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um, but yeah,
That's
so the
probably where
most
they're
I
at.
see are birds and lizards.
really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's get into some of the nerdy stuff now. Let's talk about rides. Okay. Uh, First question is, what are some of your favorite rides? Because I know you sampled quite a few. And then also, I know there's a lot of amenities. Do you get to do rides before other people? Like, I don't like. Have there been any new rides that have launched since you've been there? And then, did you guys get a preview? Like, do the cast members get any amenities like that? So let's just talk about rides for a moment. What's your thoughts on rides? What's the best ones that you've
Yeah,
sampled?
this is a difficult question because I probably have multiple answers as to what my favorite ride is. My go-to is Expedition Everest. It's in Animal Kingdom.
Hmm.
Now granted, Dad, you know this because we went whenever I was younger. I rode it for the first time at Disney World, and ever since then, I've deemed it as my absolute favorite ride.
Oh, cool.
So I just always stick with that for my favorite one.
It's
It's
nostalgic.
super
Yeah.
fast. It goes backwards. It's a lot of fun, and the theming is super cool. Um, and so that's probably my favorite like thrill ride. I will
Sure.
say the Guardians of the Galaxy ride in Epcot. It's called Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. It is as everyone raves about it. It's our newest ride.
I was gonna say it's new, right? Because I hadn't heard of it.
Besides, yes, besides, it's our second newest ride, I guess, in all of the parks. It's our newest one in Epcot. Um, it's amazing. You have to do a virtual queue to get onto it. You can't just walk up and be like, "Hey, I want to ride this ride." You have to like sign up on the My Disney Experience app before. But that one is worth the hype. Everyone loves it. It's worth it. The newest ride, though, at any of the parks is Tron Light Cycle,
Ooh.
and that's
It
in
was in
Magic Kingdom.
Japan for a long time, and then they brought it over, right?
Yes, they finally
Mhm.
decided to utilize the fact that they had made a Tron movie, what, like, almost 10 years ago now,
The
um,
music is
and make a ride.
unbelievable.
Daft Punk, they did
Daft
Daft
a
Punk,
Punk,
great
oh
job.
my gosh. I
and they're not
swear
even
they
together anymore.
I know. They're gonna be doing another Tron movie, I've
Right, and it's
read.
not gonna be worth it if Daft Punk isn't
They
doing
Ugh,
the
need to
they
bring him
gotta.
soundtrack.
back.
They gotta bring him out of
We
retirement
gotta
because.
fix this,
So on that ride, when
Exactly.
you rode it, is it that music and everything? Like, is it all
Yes.
the same
So,
synth?
what was really
oh,
cool
awesome.
is that actually just opened to the public, I believe, at the beginning of April.
Mm.
I don't know the exact date. However, cast members did get a preview, so, we got
I'll make sure I try
to
to find
sign up.
footage of it and put it, yeah, out there.
Yeah, yeah, I may have some videos I can
Okay, that'd
give
be
you to
great.
put up, and so it's essentially we got to sign up for a time slot, and we got to write it, and within our time slot, we could write it for as many times as we could get through the line.
That's so
So,
cool.
however, your
That's
time slot's
awesome.
only, like, 30 minutes. So
Right.
I, got to write it twice in my
Mhm.
time slot, and now, however, it is open to the public. It also has a virtual queue, so that is how you sign up for it. Um, it is I like Guardians a little bit more, but
Sure.
it was super cool. You're literally riding a light cycle is what
That's so cool.
it's like, and it goes incredibly fast. And it's
Mm.
partially indoors and partially outdoors, which is really, really
Oh,
cool.
that's cool.
But the wait is super cool because it's all Tron themed, and so you're listening to, the music from the movie the whole time. They've got these screens up analyzing each, rider and, like, the cycles and all of
It's
that,
like
and so
waiting in
it's
line is an experience on a lot of
it
Absolutely.
is.
these, right?
Almost
Yeah.
Yeah.
all of the rides have really cool theming whenever it comes to the weight and everything, and now I'm a huge nerd for, like, lots of things, but also, like, Halloween specifically, so, like, Tower of Terror and the Haunted Mansion are also 2 of my favorites just because of the theming of them.
Mhm.
It's so well carried throughout the ride, and just the queue line, like, the weight and everything is really cool, and so it's fun to just look at everything. One that has one of the best, I think, weights that's the most entertaining is, another it's a little bit newer, it's not nearly as new as the other 2, like Tron and Guardians, but it's Avatar. The whole Pandora section of Avatar came out at once, so there's
Mhm.
2 rides in there, and that all happened at once. Avatar Flight of Passage, though, is where you ride a banshee,
Oh,
essentially.
cool.
Oh, that's
It's
really cool.
amazing. That ride, though, they literally have a giant avatar in a tank as you're waiting and stuff, like, it's
Whoa.
yeah, like,
That
you
sounds
you
awesome.
you walk
That
up
sounds
to it like, now it's further into the line,
yeah.
like, it's whenever you're getting close to being able to ride the ride, but, like, you walk up this thing is huge, and it's in
That's
this
so
like,
cool.
floating in this tank and stuff. It's super cool. So they
That's
spend a lot of
wicked.
time making the wait, entertaining as
That's cool.
much as they can be for people, which is really,
Oh,
really
that's
cool.
awesome. That is so cool.
Yeah,
You
it's
got the
awesome.
next one.
It's,
Yeah.
there's lots of cool rides. I could go on forever about them.
That's cool.
So you're talking about virtual queues that piqued my interest. Is that a set time or is that kind of just a general idea of when you're going to be able to get on?
Yeah, so what it does, is now there's 2 chances you have for the Guardians one. It opens at 7 a.m. and then I think there's one at 2 p.m. or 1 p.m., one of the 2. And essentially, you log onto the app and you make sure you have all the people you want to be able to be in your group to ride. And like you have to be connected on the app, and then you hit virtual queues. And at the time that the queue opens, you hit join queue, and essentially it gives you a spot in there, and then it will assign you a time, I believe,
Oh,
um,
cool.
and then you show up to that ride at that time. They scan your if you have a magic band, they scan your
Mhm.
magic band, which is essentially like connects to your perk pass and everything
Mhm.
like that. If you're staying in a resort, it connects to your resort hotel room. Lots of things like that. If you don't have that, I don't use that. I have my park pass on my phone, and then I just scan it that way. Um, and I will say, if you show up at a different time, then like if you're a little late to your assigned
There's
time
some
for the
leeway.
queue, most of the time, they will not say anything. I think,
Oh,
I rode Guardians a few days ago, and I believe I was, like, 2 hours late to our assigned time, and they let us on, no
oh, well, that's
problem.
good.
So, I mean, and people think that, like, if they it's same with Lightning Lane. If you show up, a little bit late for like, they're just
They're
gonna
not going
let
to
you
be
on.
completely.
No.
Hey, this guy's out of line. Get him out. Yeah.
Not gonna,
Yeah, it's like
yeah.
honestly, people don't care that much, they'll just let you on most of the time. Now, I mean, you may
Cool.
get a stickler of a cast member, but I've never
Yeah.
seen anyone, like, been refused away because they were a little bit late, kind of thing.
Oh.
Cool.
So I'm learning a lot today. You said magic bands. Now I've seen these on YouTube and TikTok, like that they do cool things at different areas, unlock boxes, maybe at the Super Mario. So what do they do here?
Yeah, it's a little more basic in Disney World than, like, unlocking things. Most of the time, it's just tied to if you're staying at a Disney resort, you can, connect it to it'll be like your hotel room key, so it'll
Oh,
open your
okay.
doors. It gets you into the park, you scan it, and then you also scan your thumbprint or your fingerprint to get into the park.
D Does it
Um,
also help with tracking your kids for loss prevention of kids? I don't know if I read that at one
That
point.
would be
it
a
Disney
cool
was
feature.
trying to
could
help families stay safe in case a
It
kid wanders from
it
their
it it could potentially because, if we have a lost child who has a magic band, we can always scan it and then get
identification.
the information who,
Yeah.
like, the parent is, who, like
That's
because
pretty cool.
obviously the kid isn't gonna have, like,
Sure.
their own information tied to the room or
Yeah.
anything like that, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it'll, let us know the
That's
parent, and
cool.
typically we have, a number on file or something
Sure.
like that. Most of the time,
Yeah.
I don't think it gets to that point. I think hopefully we
Yeah.
can reunite them before we have to
Yeah.
do something like that. Um, but yeah, you can also connect, like, a form of payment, to it, and so, like, like Apple Watches or
Sure.
things like that, you can do that. I have a lot of people paying with their Magic Band whenever
Okay.
I'm
That's
at
cool.
the register, and so it does a lot of basic things like that as far as my knowledge. I, however, have not used a Magic Band since being here, so I personally have not experienced all the functions, so I'm
So there
not
may be more to
necessarily
it. You're just yeah.
Yes, there may be more functions that I just don't know about. Those
Sure.
are the ones I see the most often that people use it for, though, is getting into the park, getting into their hotel room, and then, like, connecting a form of payment to it.
Sure.
Oh,
Now,
cool.
I know
So
you're
before
oh, go ahead. Go
oh,
ahead.
I
I'll
was
cut that out, Doug.
cut it out. Okay,
You
you
go ahead
ready?
and ask yours.
I was gonna say, here, let me start. Before we go on, I'd like to say that I said Mario. I haven't been to Disney World. I haven't been to Universal Studios. So for our audience that sends me hate mail, hey, Mario's not at Disney World. I just want to make that clear.
That's happened.
No,
Okay.
but Florida is probably about to get a, like, Nintendo World thing, and
Oh,
We saw that, yeah.
it's it's
It's
crazy
also
here.
in
There's so
Japan.
much. Yes,
It's
it's
also in
already
Japan.
yep,
They're
yeah.
bringing it over to Orlando, yep.
yes,
I like to
yeah.
tell the listeners that, yeah, I make mistakes, but I'm going to go back and grab it.
That's okay. Maybe
A-okay.
you'll hear less comments now, like
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
I've
It's
had
okay.
flubs. They've called me out on it. It happens.
I talk to people though that I mean, it's hard to grasp even just what Disney is. I talk to people that didn't even
Yeah,
realize that Disney is 4 parks,
it's
and
Oh,
massive.
yeah.
and then also the amount of resorts we have is insane. It is
Yeah.
crazy Disney property wise. It is like its own
So it's hard to keep up with
city,
it. There's so
just the
much
Disney
Yeah.
there.
property.
Yeah.
Do they give you kind of a rough estimate of how many people or visitors are in the park at one time?
So actually, I have whenever I get sometimes we get sent to other areas to work whenever, like, certain spots may need more workers than typical. I got sent to the one of our water parks to work, Typhoon Lagoon, and they started their morning by letting their staff, like their quick service staff, know how many people had entered the park so far that day, which was really really cool.
That's cool.
Um,
Yeah, it helps out. Yeah.
However, at Epcot, it's a little more difficult to do it just, like, with the big parks, and so I don't know, like, an average number. I mean, it's a crazy
It's
amount,
thousands upon
honestly.
thousands, I'm
Yeah.
It's
sure.
that I
Tens
mean,
of
it's
thousands
tens of
of
thousands.
yeah.
Oh man.
The amount of people I see daily is just
It's insane.
ridiculous.
So I on that note, I know you're a fan, but I gotta ask it. You were there for Star Wars Day? How many people were there? Was it busier? I envisioned that since Disney bought, Star Wars, it's one of their biggest IPs. People plan their vacations around it. Were there tons of people? Like, was there an influx in population? What was it like? Did you get to experience it? What was Star Wars Day like at Disney?
Um, in one word, magical. But no, it was
Yeah.
so even before they bought, Lucasfilm and before they had Galaxy's Edge and everything, they had Star Wars weekends. So like Disney already was sort of like tied to the idea of Star Wars, and then it just
Oh, yeah.
has grown immensely since then,
Oh, I
especially with
can
the
bet.
addition of Galaxy's Edge. Because I will say, I go anytime I go to Galaxy's Edge, it is like walking onto a movie set. Like
Mm,
it is amazing. Now they do only have 2 rides within Galaxy's Edge. Um, both are they have long waits most of the time. I will say both are worth the wait. I personally think they are. Um, but on Star Wars Day specifically, May 4th, may the 4th be with you. I went later in the day to the park in hopes of I knew there was going to be a crowd no matter what, but in hopes of not like necessarily being with the first influx sort of crowd
mhm.
because people spread out their whole day um, throughout it, and I was working days leading up to Star Wars Day, and I had people in Star Wars gear at Epcot, like decked out. They had planned their weekend
Mhm.
trip or week trip around it. We have a lot of annual pass holders that come all the time that are
Yeah.
locals,
Locals, yeah.
um, and everything like that. So we do have a lot of those kind of people that can just come whenever they want. They don't necessarily have to plan a full trip around it. But whenever I went to Hollywood Studios on Star Wars Day, it was in the afternoon, and I still had to wait to get scan into the park, and that
Oh,
is
wow.
so rare at the time of day I went because I think I went at, like, 4 or 5 PM. So and at that time of day, typically, there is absolutely no line. If you're
Mm,
gonna wait in the line to get into the park, it's whenever rope drops and the park's open.
mm,
Um, and so it was very rare that I had now it wasn't a long line,
yeah.
but I still had to wait in line for it, and that is very rare. It was packed, like, it was
Yeah.
busy. It reminded
Was
me a
was
lot
The
more of
Mandalorian
how
walking around that day? Like, isn't The
we had
Mandalorian
a few.
normally
Yes, Mandalorian
how
actually
does that
made his
work?
debut, a couple months ago in Galaxy's Edge here in
Okay.
Disney World because he first made his debut, I believe, in Disneyland and
Mhm.
then debuted here at Disney World. And characters have a set schedule that they know of that they make appearances at certain locations. However, they don't publish that just in case for some
Sure.
reason they have to switch it around and they can't make it or they get super
Yeah, yeah.
dehydrated and you know.
Makes total sense.
So
Yeah.
um yes, they were roaming around. Whenever I got there, I think most of Mando's times were done. He wasn't same
Mhm.
with Kylo Ren, but we had stormtroopers everywhere. They do the stormtroopers are out the
All the
most
time.
frequent
Mhm.
of all of the characters. I think they also had some extra ones that don't typically show aren't typically walking around. I
Just
believe.
because of the day, yeah.
Yeah.
The May
Yeah,
the
I
4th.
don't I know Disneyland specifically had a
Mhm.
lot more. Disney World, I know of a handful, we had Ewoks, I think, or something
Oh, that's cool.
we had little
Mm,
things like that.
yeah.
There's a meet and greet with Chewbacca typically, but I think he did a little bit more walking around, and so, things
Sure.
like that, they had a little extra of. Um, that's not necessarily why I was going, so I didn't I
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily looking for those things, but, they did have them there that day. Mando specifically has been, a very big deal since his debut,
Yeah,
and so
'cause of the
they're
show.
very, very careful with his appearances because there's been a few times that there's been a few concerns for his safety with the amount of people that were incredibly excited to see him.
Gotcha.
Oh, I can imagine that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, I could easily do the same thing, but we forget that it is not the real person and that it
Yeah.
is typically a college age person just in a costume. Like most of the time you're meeting like a 20-year-old that just is,
Yes.
making
Yeah.
money. Like that's and
Yeah.
so that's
But
the
little kids
unfortunate
don't
thing.
know that, right? Little kids don't know that, so
Obviously
they're
not,
gonna
but I'm
be
not gonna lie to you, most of the time it's
adults
more
too.
adults. Adults
Jesus.
care more about the characters a lot of the time than the kids do, especially Star Wars wise. I met the Mandalorian once, whenever he made an appearance, and it was way more adults that cared than children.
That's funny.
Like, there was way more adults wanting photos with him and everything, which I couldn't judge. Wanted a
Yeah,
photo with
no,
him
that's
too.
cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But, uh
You got drunk guys yelling at Kylo Ren, "Why'd you kill Solo?"
well, actually, we don't have alcohol in,
Oh,
any
Oh, that's a good
of the
question
parks
too.
except for Epcot walking around.
Epcot. Okay, well, that's
So,
good.
most of the
Because
time
you
if you're
could have
going to
weird
Epcot,
situations, I would think.
yeah, it'll be sit down restaurants,
Yeah,
at now, Hollywood Studios may have 1 or 2 spots you can get alcohol, but
sure.
it's not nearly as easily accessible. Magic
Yeah.
Kingdom, they don't have any alcohol except for, I believe, the sit down restaurants like Be Our Guest and things
So
like
Kylo
that.
Ren's safe from getting yelled at by drunk people. That's good.
He is more safe than he would be in Epcot, that's for sure. In Epcot, who knows? We have a system
It's
where, like,
true.
we evaluate how drunk someone is, and it's red zoned whenever
Oh,
someone just
Oh.
should not be given anymore, and the
that's
amount of red
hilarious.
zone people I see is,
Probably.
we call them, we're like, "Hey, you want a complimentary bottle of water?" Um,
Is
so
it that they're sick of their kids and they're just trying to forget that and
It's
or
usually
they
it's people that wanna drink around the world at Epcot,
yeah.
so it's this whole idea of you go to each country in the World Showcase and you get at least 1 drink in that country,
Oh, okay. So it's like
and you do
a
that throughout the
walking
day.
drinking tour thing. Yeah.
However, what do we have? We have at least, I wanna say 8 countries, around 8,
That's mhm.
something like that. Some people don't pace themselves, some people get multiple drinks in,
Uh-oh.
1 country, and so we just safety-wise are
Gotcha.
always looking out for those that maybe they, should finish drinking around the world another day, but
Gotcha.
Right.
Well,
but yeah, no.
I didn't mean to go down the drunk path. The
Yes.
one
No, but yeah,
but on
most of the
the
time, Mando's not dealing with drunk people.
okay, that's good. Well, on the
Right.
drunk on or no, see, I'm saying on the drunk thing. On the Star Wars thing. So I had sent you because they were limited edition. I didn't think you'd get your hands on it, and I sent you, and you did the lightsaber churros. Are they good?
I will say,
Oh.
in general, I'm a churro fan. I
Yes,
I appreciate the Disney churros,
but they had them for
um,
just that day, right?
but just for that day, they had the lightsaber churro. It was amazing. It was better than the normal churro, maybe just because it looked cool, but they had a red one and a blue one, and the little holder for the
Mm,
churro
just
looked
the hilt.
like the lightsaber hilt,
Yep.
and it had, the cinnamon sugar, just the sugar part was essentially like, like there's sprinkles like that are just essentially
Yeah.
sugar
Yeah.
grains and stuff that are colored. That's what was on it with the cinnamon and everything. I got the red one because it was a little better coated than the blue one, but each
That's
one
awesome.
had like a different, like the red one had, Darth Vader's hilt for
That's
his
cool.
lightsaber stuff, and then the blue one, I think it had,
Probably
I wanna
Luke's
say
or
Luke's.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure it was Luke's. Um,
which is technically
and so
Anakin's. If we're gonna split hairs.
First off, Mace Windu, he didn't get his own churro?
no, but that would have been
Purple.
that would have been amazing. If they could have mixed blue and red together to make
Yes, I
purple.
know.
They should have. I would
I'm
have
gonna go.
bought
Wait,
it.
wait, wait, wait. No, I'm gonna top you both. A Darth Maul churro with
Oh, there you
churros on
go.
both
Don't
ends.
get me started.
Man, that
I'm just
sounds
saying.
great.
I'm just saying. Mace Windu would
I
be
already
cool, but you
I
get
already
double
paid too
churro with
much.
Darth
I
Maul
already paid too much for the one I bought, but I would pay quite
for
a
the
bit for
Darth
that.
Maul one. Yeah.
Well, and they
So
only
you
had
open
them
it.
at one stand and
Oh
stuff
yeah.
Oh,
too
I
I
in
didn't
the
bet
think
that
you'd
was
get
whole
one.
busy.
park.
I didn't think you'd get one. When you sent me the pictures, I was
Me
shocked. So
neither.
see, Doug,
But
what you
I walked
started.
into the park and I saw someone with it and I was like, "They're here." And I, like, hunted down the cart until I found it. That's why
That's
I went,
awesome.
essentially.
That's awesome. So I am gonna go and touch on the drunk Epcotians real quick.
Okay.
Uh, so in law enforcement, I'm kind of excited that you all have a security force or a police force. I know Disney World has its own fire department, and we talked about that in a previous podcast. But how do you handle, if you know, like security problems and stuff like that?
Yeah, so, most of the time for emergency situations, we there's different levels, obviously, of emergency, and so we're trained for
Yeah.
different levels of things. Most of the time, if it's a real emergency, they tell that we don't deal with it. They tell us to call. Disney
Makes sense.
World's emergency response team is called Reedy Creek, Reedy Creek. And essentially, we have fire, ambulance, and police that are all
Oh,
within
cool.
that. And what we do, we have a number that can go directly to them, but if there is an emergency, I can even call 911 and I say, "Hey, I'm on Disney property. Please connect me to Reedy Creek. There's an emergency." And they will immediately, because they're on Disney owned property. They have multiple, offices and stations sort of throughout Disney property. And they also know it
They're
like the
probably
back of
nearby.
their hand. Yeah, they
Yeah.
know it like the back of their hand. They're going to get there 10 times faster than the Orange
Oh, yeah,
County,
I imagine.
um,
Yeah.
departments. And so, we also have a few code words for like certain types of emergency situations. Most of the time, if we have to call Reedy Creek, it's called an alpha is what we do, because a lot of time the code words, we don't want to say, "Hey, let's call security," like, or call
Yeah.
security in front of guests, because it can cause a panic. It can stress people out. They're still on vacation. Our priority is everyone
Sure.
safety as well.
Definitely.
And so most of the time we say we need to call an alpha if we need to call them, just because
Oh,
it
It's
keeps, the
generic. Yeah.
yeah, it's, a little bit of a code word type thing, and so, they're really cool. I personally haven't had tons of interactions with them, thankfully. I've not been involved in many emergencies. There was
It's
only
good.
one time I
yeah,
have been at a
that's really good.
location where we had to call them, and it was just because one of my coworkers accidentally popped her knee out of place.
Oh,
So,
no.
we did have an ambulance, a
Sure.
Reedy Creek ambulance come, and they say Reedy Creek on the side of all of our emergency vehicles and everything like that. And our pathways backstage are big enough; they drive right through it.
Sure.
Like it's
That's
Oh,
awesome.
yeah.
That's really
kind of thing.
cool.
Like we've got roads sort
Mhm.
of in the back, and so they can easily get to and from where they need to. Um, and so they every one I've talked to though that has had like personal experience with them says they're awesome to work with. Um, and they help us a lot because they know the property probably even better than like people like me that have only been working here like a few months, because while I'm talking about all of this stuff, I am by no means an expert, and there are plenty of other people that have worked here
Sure. Many,
so
many
much
years.
longer
Sure.
than
Yeah.
me. Um, but yeah, so it's really
Cool.
cool that we have that sort of amenity and like access to something that quickly and that know the property so well.
Cool.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'll
Mhm.
get back on track here. Now, I've been told that you got to experience a Guardians of the Galaxy kind
Premiere.
of premium event. Could you tell us about that?
Spoiler warning though, because we're gonna
Yes.
segue into a little bit of talk about Guardians. If you haven't seen it yet, pause the podcast because we may accidentally dive into it. This is volume 3. But Leah, go ahead and explain to us what you got to see before it even released to the public, right?
Yeah, so it was a really cool opportunity, because the Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind ride is in Epcot. Epcot cast members had an opportunity to sign up for a early preview showing of the film, and there was, I believe, 3 different like days slash time we could show up to do it. The movie came out on May 5th. The day I attended the movie was May 3rd, so I got to see it 2 whole days before everyone
Oh,
Nice.
else.
awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. And essentially, there was a little flyer in the in one of our break rooms with a QR code, and I scanned it and I signed up because I
Nice.
said this sounds amazing. Um,
Absolutely.
and it happened at Disney Springs, which is a whole other thing. That's what used to be downtown Disney. I don't know if anyone knows about that, but there's an AMC in Disney Springs, and that is
Okay.
where it was being held. And so essentially, you showed up, you made sure you had your confirmation email and your work ID, and that was it. They didn't give tons of information as to like what it was going to entail. They just said it was an early showing. So, and I said great, and showed up with very little information. And they ushered us to the back of the building, and we all hopped in line. And then you essentially scanned in, and they gave you this lanyard that said, Epcot, like early showing. Like it was
Hmm.
really
Oh,
cool,
really cool.
official. They also gave us some Zarg nuts that are, like, eaten in the movie by
Yeah.
Drax.
Uh,
However, they were peanuts is what they gave us, but it was really cool. It was branded, that way,
I'll
like,
put
the
a
Disney
picture up.
like
I'll
yeah,
put a
like,
picture
it
of it.
looked like what Drax has in the movie,
Yeah.
which was really, really cool once we, watched the
It's
movie and saw it.
I was looking for it because you had told me about that before the movie, and we went to go see the movie. It's the package is almost identical because it's at
Yes.
the very beginning of the movie, and it's
Yeah.
Mhm.
when Mantis said, "Maybe I wanted a nut," and he goes, "They're all gone," and then he takes the last one, and he puts it in his
Right.
mouth.
Yeah.
Right, and
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was going to be in the movie. I thought it was a
So
nod
cool.
to the ride because in the, like,
Ah,
pre-show part of the ride, the Guardians are talking to you, sort of, and he is eating them also in that,
Oh,
so I thought it was a
okay,
nod to that, until I,
that's
got in
awesome.
and saw the movie, and essentially what they did was, they rented well, not rented, and they own it because Disney owns the theater, of course. But they reserved multiple theaters
Oh
in
wow.
the AMC for us, and so they had, I believe, it was over 1,000 cast members. I think
oh man.
around
Yeah.
2,000 cast members for each date that could sign up, and they split us up between multiple theaters. Um, and it was all paid for, like the movie wise. Like we didn't have to pay for our movie ticket. We just, if we wanted snacks, we could pay for those. And they ushered us, through there and to our specific theater. Whenever you got your lanyard on the back, it said what theater you were supposed to go to.
Very
You
efficient.
went to your theater, um, and then you waited for the movie to start, and
Cool.
sort of they had a really cool thing where they showed us 4 unseen previews of upcoming Disney movies, which was really cool. I
Oh.
Oh.
believe we saw an unseen preview for the new Little Mermaid movie,
Hmm.
the upcoming Indiana Jones movie, Elemental, which is a new like cartoon movie coming up, and then the Haunted Mansion, which I personally was very excited about
Oh.
that preview because
Very
it was like the
exciting.
first preview they had made for that movie, and so it was really cool to get to see like some unseen things like that,
That's cool.
and then we got to watch the movie early. I
Wh-
personally ran into the issue of I was trying to look up a reviews on it, but b if there was how many end credit scenes there was because that's just
Yeah.
how
But
I
no
go
one
into
had seen
movies.
it.
I like to check, but I forgot that no one else had seen the movie, so and there was nothing on the internet, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah," so
That's
that
kind
was
of
kind of
cool.
funny,
So,
but
did
it
you
was
like
really
the movie?
cool.
What was your overall thoughts? Give us a real quick rundown of what did you think of Volume 3, Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yeah, so while I do work for Disney, for a while now, I have not necessarily been the most excited about, recent Marvel films. They just haven't gotten me
Sure.
as excited as some other films.
I'd
I
agree.
always enjoy
Yeah.
them,
Post
Makes
but
sense.
Infinity War, things
it's
honestly,
just hasn't felt the same.
the most exciting thing post Infinity War, in my opinion, has been in the television space with Loki was
Yes.
That's true.
good.
I think the TV shows, and then also
Wanda,
personally, I
yeah.
did like No Way Home, like
Hmm.
that,
That
but,
was good. That was
um
good.
this has probably been one of my favorites post Infinity War, this movie, and now I didn't I had good expectations, but I just didn't have crazy high expectations, and I think it just overall exceeded a
Yeah,
lot of that,
beautiful
just
movie.
because of
Yeah.
the comedy, the heart of it. I think that the story that was being told was just so much more heartfelt than I was expecting,
Yep.
um, and so it definitely surprised me in a lot of ways, and I was in this theater with only other Epcot cast members, and most people were just bawling. Like, there was a
Yeah.
poor woman physically shaking in front of me, she was crying so hard. Like,
There's
it was
some there's some gut
There's some
wrenching
deep
oh man, yeah. There's some
deep messages in there, yeah.
and it's multiple spots where what I appreciated about it was the pacing. They would get sad and then funny, then sad, then funny. And like the
Mhm,
Yeah.
pacing was perfect. Talk about going out on a bang. I will say, I don't want to admit it, it does make me excited about what James Gunn's going to do with DC. If he
mhm,
can do that after, because volume 1 and 2 are just impeccable. They're good.
Very good.
But
Yeah.
to top it, I mean, like,
yeah.
wow. Like, I
I
was
thought the
impressed.
music was great.
Oh,
It
music
was
was
it
great,
and that's the
acting
Yeah.
thing.
was great.
Everyone is wondering if we're gonna so the whole idea of Cosmic Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, the ride is that it in sort of each time you ride it, it has a different song that plays that was
That's
on the
so
Oh,
soundtrack, and it's sort
that's
of
very
awesome.
cool.
you're riding along to it, super
Mhm.
fast pace, a little bit more intense. It's super cool. But the whole idea is that there's a certain amount of songs you can get. I don't know how many exactly, but every time you ride, it cycles through a different one, and it almost changes the ride experience, a lot of
That's
people
so
say.
cool.
Yeah.
And so people are wondering if some of the songs from Volume 3 are going to start to be incorporated in the ride. I highly doubt it, just because that means they would have to change the ride a little, and I don't know if it's been
Sure.
out long enough to do
Yeah,
that. However, in the future, they may end up incorporating some of those songs because all the ones that are on the ride now were used either in Volume 1 or 2, I believe.
yeah.
So
That's really
it's really
cool.
cool that it, like, centers around music.
It is, and then when I played the video game, it also the music in it is just impeccable. That's, like, one common staple, so I'm really glad they incorporated that into the ride, but yeah, the movie was awesome. Doug, did you like the movie? I know I asked Leah, you and I hadn't talked about it since I
We
know.
haven't, yeah. I knew we were gonna talk about it tonight. I thought it was really good. I mean, the classic that brought me back was the music, like we said. The first one, the second one, they're my lists on Spotify, volume 1, volume 2, now volume 3, I'm gonna have to add that. And then James Gunn, again, I think he did an amazing job telling the story, kinda giving us a roller coaster of emotions, high and lows, so it was really good.
Yep. I love that they developed, characters that he hadn't done. I like that he focused on characters that have kind of been in the background. Nebula. Yeah, she was
Yes.
a staple in the others, but by goodness, she, like, really stepped up in this
Yeah.
one. They spent a lot of time on her, so I thought it was great. So,
Yeah, you bring her up. One of the funniest parts in the movie, and spoiler alert, but, they look at each other, Star-Lord and Nebula, and he's compliments her on
I
her
know.
eyes.
My father was torturing me. He picked a
Yeah,
really nice shade of black.
yeah.
It was just
So,
the comedy and the
it was a
sadness
really
in the
good
movie
movie,
is
yeah, yeah.
it's awesome. So we're gonna bring it around home here, Doug. So I'm gonna let you get our second to last question, and then I'll tackle our last one here for Leah because she's been very gracious with her time.
Yeah, now I have, some question from my wife, Ashley. She said, "What is your favorite Disney princess if you are into princesses?" That's how it was
It's a,
worded to me. So,
it's a good
I love that.
condition.
Yeah,
You may not like him.
um, that's true, not everyone does. I personally My favorite just sort of changed over time. Growing up, it was always Sleeping Beauty, Aurora.
cool. Yeah.
However, as I've gotten older, it definitely has become more Belle just because I identify with her book loving nature because I'm a
Yeah.
bit of a book nerd. But then also, I've really loved some of the newer age princesses like Tiana and Rapunzel. I think they're really cool, and they've also started to give them some really cool spaces within a lot of the parks, even and everything, and tried to integrate them a little bit more. Um, and so I think those are really cool. I mean, Disney wise, there's so many cool characters that we just get to see and stuff a lot of the time, and that I even like would like them to have like bring into the park and everything. I don't think they ever will, but um, yeah. So there's a lot of cool ones. It's a hard question,
Huh?
but those
Yeah.
are that's probably
No.
my go to answers.
It's a good question, honestly. Good job, Ashley.
Yeah.
Contributing, stepping up.
Alrighty. Keith, you want to close us out with the last
Yeah,
question?
I think I know this one, but I'm gonna go ahead and ask it. What's your favorite superhero? Who
Uh,
is your all-time favorite superhero?
Oh, good question.
Well, here's the thing.
Oh, she always has
Uh-oh.
conditions.
Uh-oh. Here we go.
If we're talking about Marvel, it's gonna be different
Yeah.
because typically my
Then
go-to
split it
answer
up.
is
Split it up by
DC.
property.
Like,
Then
typically
s- give a Marvel answer, then give a DC answer.
okay, because typically my go-to is DC. So if we're talking about Marvel, it's definitely, Wolverine and, Captain America. Those are my 2
Absolutely. Yeah,
Sure.
favorites for Marvel.
Solid.
I really
definitely.
like them, specifically Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. I
He's
must
amazing.
say
He's
that
coming
just
back for
because
Deadpool too.
I
So
am so excited. So that's definitely for Marvel. And now there's a lot of great ones, but those are probably my
sure.
go-to favorites.
Okay.
And then but my, like, all-time favorite superhero is probably the Flash for DC. Like, I love the Flash and Supergirl. Those are always my go-to answers. They're not Disney affiliated though, so I
They're
guess
not.
that's not, the
That's
best
okay.
Disney
Yeah,
employee answer,
No.
but
I accept that. That's good.
Don't get
Yeah.
her started on Harry Potter. Oh my
Oh, no, yeah.
goodness. Awesome.
we'd
Well,
be on here
Leah,
for 4 hours.
we would be. We would, especially if I get her talking about the upcoming Flash movie. So
Uh-oh.
I know,
Uh-oh.
I know. Hot
So
take.
many so many
Hot take.
thoughts.
I know. Maybe we can have you back on to talk about that.
Yeah.
Leah, sweetheart, it's awesome to see you. Thank you from both Doug and I for being on the show.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you
We
guys for
just
having me. It was fun to
now
just talk
it's
about Disney for a
no,
while.
it's so cool. It's the behind the scenes stuff that nobody gets to hear about and get, you're having an awesome, cool experience there. And so, yeah, thank you so much for your time. And we really, really appreciate it. Doug, any closing thoughts for Leah?
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing this. Like I said, I have not visited. I've always wanted to. You've kind of answered a lot of questions that take that away and like, yep, I got to go here. I got to check this out. Definitely.
Doug's going to be booking a trip now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Honestly, I will say it's almost better as an adult than, like, whenever you're a kid.
I keep thinking that.
I think you get
I
to
want to get
enjoy
back
it a
there.
little bit more,
Yeah.
but so
I
I
haven't been in
recommend it.
many years. Yeah.
I
I heard
am if
a
there's
lot of adults
certain
like to
if
go.
you do ever book a trip and there's certain things you're looking for, I can point you in the right direction.
There you
I've
go.
got an expert on the
You
inside
do.
now.
You do.
I don't know about expert, but
Oh, okay. Okay.
More expert than what
there's
either
people
one
that
of us
get
would be.
paid to
Yeah.
plan each other's like,
Jeez.
other people's Disney trips.
Wow, it's a
It's
career path.
intense. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna let you go. I know it's late. Thank you very much, Leah. Love you very much.
Thank you,
We will talk to
guys.
Yep.
everybody very
See
soon.
ya.
That
Thank
rounds
you.
out our end of our episode. Check out our website, our merch store. Don't forget, tell your friends, and thank you for joining us. And we will talk to you all very, very soon. Take care.
Yep. See you all. Thank you.